some things that you faced this week, you have faced many, many, many times in the past. Occasionally, we have unique opportunities to experience something new, something that maybe we only experience once in our lives. Maybe it's an opportunity to travel outside the country or a specific location outside of the country. Maybe it's an opportunity to meet someone powerful or someone famous. Maybe it's a gathering of certain people from your past. Maybe it's some unique training that you can receive. But one characteristic of a unique experience is that you have trouble comparing that experience to other events in life. That's what makes it unique. It's so different that from what you've already seen or done that it sticks out to you. And unfortunately, this means that sometimes we really don't know how to handle those experiences very well. We might walk away from them wondering, did I just really just say that? Or did I really just do that? And quite honestly, we come to a passage in the Gospel of Mark that shows a very unique event in the Bible, as Jesus is transfigured before three of his disciples. There are aspects of this event that we will not understand and we cannot explain or know in detail. We don't have another account in the Bible besides parallel accounts in other Gospels where they're showing the same event. We don't have another account where somebody is transfigured. We can still learn from Mark 9, 2-13, but our understanding of what happened there is going to be capped at that. What's being said, our passage today is very similar in some respects to the events of Exodus 24. In that chapter, God told Moses to go near to him. I'm going to read from some verses in Exodus 24, and I hope as we end up reading that passage and then Mark 9, that you'll see some of the similarities between what Moses experienced being in the cloud of God's glory on the mountain, Mount Sinai, and the transfiguration of Jesus as he and his followers are in the cloud that overshadowed them. And as there's the voice on high, a voice speaking to them on that high mountain. So please listen to some parts of Exodus 24 as I read, and listen specifically for the experience that Moses had on Mount Sinai. Verses 1 and 2 of Exodus 24. Then he said to Moses, "Come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and worship from afar. Moses alone shall come near to the Lord, but the others shall not come near, and the people shall not come up with him." And down to verse 12. The Lord said to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain and wait there, and I may give you the tablets of stone with the law and the commandment, which I have written for their instruction." So Moses rose with his assistant Joshua, and Moses went up into the mountain of God. And he said to the elders, "Wait here for us until we return to you. And behold, Aaron and Hur are with you. Whoever has a dispute, let him go there to them." Then Moses went up on the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain. The glory of the Lord dwelt on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And on the seventh day he called to Moses out of the midst of the cloud. And the appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a devouring fire on the top of the mountain, in the sight of the people of Israel. Moses entered the cloud and went up onto the mountain. And Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. There's another man who spoke with God on Mount Sinai. It's also called in the Bible, it seems, Mount Horeb, and the man was Elijah. 1 Kings 19, verses 8-13 relates some of his experience. I'm just going to reference that passage this morning. But both Moses and Elijah spoke with God on that mountain. In our text today, Mark 9, 2-13, Jesus is going to bring, again, three of his disciples to a high mountain where he will be transfigured and meet with two other men, Moses and Elijah. And during this meeting, God will speak. He will recognize Jesus as his son. And that is the theme for the passage today. Listen to Jesus, the glorious Son of God. Jesus has just 6 days earlier given a difficult message to his followers and the crowd. God the Father here makes it clear, at least to these three men, that they must listen to Jesus even if his message is difficult. And it is a difficult message. The passage, I believe, then shows why these men, as a result, should listen to Jesus, the glorious Son of God. So back to Mark 9, starting in verse 2. Please listen as I read. And after 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them. And his clothes became radiant, intensely white, as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, and they were talking with Jesus. And Peter said to Jesus, Rabbi, it is good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, and one for Moses, and one for Elijah. For he did not know what to say, for they were terrified. And a cloud overshadowed them, and a voice came out of the cloud. This is my beloved Son. Listen to him. And suddenly, looking around, they no longer saw anyone with them, but Jesus only. And as they were coming down the mountain, he charged them to tell no one what they had seen, until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. So they kept the matter to themselves, questioning what the rising from the dead might mean. And they asked him, why do the scribes say that first Elijah must come? And he said to them, Elijah does come first to restore all things. And how is it written of the Son of Man that he should suffer many things and be treated with contempt? But I tell you that Elijah has come, and they did to him whatever they pleased, as it is written of him. Again, this is a unique event that we come to today, but let's start digging into the passage, and we do that by seeing that the people should listen to Jesus because he is greater than Moses and Elijah, verses 2 to 8. Now let's take some time to see the transition to this event in Mark 9. Verse 2 is unique in that Mark gives a specific time between his statement in verse 1 and the trip that Jesus begins to take with his 3 disciples. It's after 6 days that Jesus heads up the mountain with Peter, James, and John. Why is the time reference important? Mark doesn't normally give lengths of time between events. What we can draw from this is that he meant us to see a connection between verses 1 and 2. So his normal way is just to move along kind of smoothly from one thing to the next. Here he gives a specific amount of time, 6 days, between those 2 things. He says in verse 1 that some who are listening to him will see the kingdom of God after it has come with power before death. Then Mark goes to the transfiguration. Not only does Mark show a connection between the saying of Jesus and the transfiguration, but Matthew and Luke in their Gospels also relate the transfiguration right after the statement. You can see those references on the screen. In some way, what Peter, James, and John are about to see shows the kingdom of God after it has come with power. I tend to think that they get a glimpse of what Jesus will look like after securing the Davidic throne in his future kingdom on earth. When they see the transfigured Jesus, they see what he will look like when he is reigning on earth at some point in the future. They get a glimpse at what things will be like in the kingdom of God. Well, Jesus and the 3 disciples journey up this mountain and come to a place where they're by themselves. What's about to happen is for their eyes and their eyes alone. Now let's spend just a brief moment remembering how much these 3 men understand Jesus rightly at this point. And the brief statement is that they do not understand much about him rightly. They barely are starting to get it. Overall, it seems they have misunderstandings of Jesus. Their view of him is murky at best. And that's illustrated by the miracles that Jesus performed in Mark 8:22-26, where he healed the blind man partially and then fully. Their sight right now of Jesus is partial. Also, most recently, it was clear that at least Peter and probably the others did not like the teachings from Jesus that he would suffer and die. These men are with Jesus, but they only barely know him at this point. And of his true glory and majesty, they have no idea. Then the end of verse 2 says that Jesus was transfigured before them. Mark gives one result of the change in verse 3. His clothes become radiant, intensely white. In fact, they are so white that they're whiter than anyone on earth could get clothes to be. But we must be careful and specific here. Mark does not just say that the clothes changed. No, he says in verse 2 that Jesus was transfigured. The word for transfigured is used very few times in the New Testament. two of those times it appears in quite significant passages. Romans 12:2 is one of those. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed, there's our word, by the renewal of your mind, by the testing, that by testing you may discern what the will of God is, what is good and acceptable and perfect. 2 Corinthians 3:18 is another of those passages that has this word for transfigured. And we all, with unveiled face, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being transformed, there's our word again, into the same image from one degree of glory to another, for this comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. The word speaks of real change. And these two uses call for the believer to be experiencing the real change that is possible through God's word and God's Spirit while pursuing Christ. But in what sense is Jesus changed or transformed or transfigured so that he is different? Well, perhaps this is one area where the similarity to this passage and some events in Moses' life comes through. Exodus 34:35 shares how the skin of Moses' face would shine after he went in to speak with God. God's presence would make his skin shine, at least for a time. But the shining of Moses' face was a temporary change. It was something that faded away. It was something that was there because it was close fellowship with God. Here in Mark 9, we're not looking at a temporary change to Jesus where he reflects the glory of God. Instead, we see the true nature of Jesus is no longer hidden. His glory is now there for his disciples to behold. For a time, as Jesus is before those men, they see his fuller glory. What effect does this have on them? Well, we'll have to wait a bit to answer that question as we come to it in the passage. But we can say that later, Peter understood much better what he saw. He says in 2 Peter 1:16, "For we did not follow cleverly devised myths when we made known to you the power and coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, but we were eyewitnesses of his majesty." I think what he says there in 2 Peter 1:16 is talking about this event. He saw the majesty of Jesus. And as we said before, sometimes those unique experiences, you don't know how to handle them at first. I don't think Peter knew how to handle it at first, but over time, he came to understand what he saw. But at this point, he doesn't realize what he's seeing, and I think the text shows that. Suddenly, Jesus is not on the high mountain only with Peter, James, and John. Elijah and Moses join them. How do the disciples know that it's Elijah and Moses? The text doesn't say. The text also does not directly say what state these men are in, though judging by Peter's reaction, it seems very reasonable to assume that they also appeared in some kind of glorious form. Why can we say that? Because Peter wanted to make a tent for each of them. But if we were to turn to Luke 9:31, it states that these men also appeared in glory. Elijah and Moses arrive on the mountain, and we don't know how they get there, or in the end, how they leave. Verse 4 does say that they appeared to the group and talked with Jesus. As for another detail we learn from Mark, the text doesn't say what they talk about. You say you're describing a lot of what we don't know, but Luke 9:31 helps us here when it says that they spoke of his departure, which he was about to accomplish in Jerusalem. So at least part of what they talked about was Jesus' coming days and his suffering ahead. But there's a question you might have thought of as well. Why Elijah and Moses? How are these two significant? Well, these men represented teaching and tradition that looked forward to Jesus. Deuteronomy 18:15 says, speaking of Moses, "The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me," this is speaking of Jesus, "from among you, from your brothers. It is to him you shall listen." Then Malachi 4:4-6 says, "Remember the law of my servant Moses, the statutes and rules that I commanded him at Horeb for all Israel. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes. And he will turn the hearts of fathers to their children, and the hearts of children to their fathers, lest I come and strike the land with a decree of utter destruction." So the expectation for Elijah was that he would have a role in bringing a change of heart to the people before the day of the Lord, before the day of judgment. A second reason for these men, and maybe not so much a reason, but an observation, is that each of these men met with God on a mountain. They had a similar experience, a little different, but similar to what's happening in Mark 9. So these men meet with Jesus and discuss his coming departure and his mission in Jerusalem. Whatever the disciples have in mind, Jesus and these men know what he's about to face. Verse 5 returns to Peter. And here we clearly see he misses the significance of the transfiguration, at least initially, because if we look at verse 5, what does Peter call Jesus? He calls him Rabbi. So why is that important? Well, Rabbi means my teacher. He's there, seeing the glory of Christ. And what does he call him? Teacher. That shows he doesn't get it. Further, he sees Moses and Elijah as being equal with Jesus. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, and one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He does not recognize the glory of the Son of God, but merely the glory of 3 men. If you were to set 3 handbags before me and tell me to identify the one that is the genuine Armani bag, I would not be confident in my ability to make the right choice. I don't have the knowledge to tell the difference between those. I might look for the obvious. Does the sticker peel off of one of them? Is the zipper already broken on any of them? Peter did not have the capacity, it seems, to tell the difference between Jesus, the Son of God, and 2 faithful saints of the past who were merely men. Sadly, many today seem to have trouble in telling how Jesus is different from other fakes as well. As we arrive at verse 6, some come down hard on Peter. He didn't know what to say, so here's Peter speaking before thinking once again. But I think we have reason actually to see Peter's words in a more positive light. It seems that Jews were looking forward to the time when God would tabernacle with his people, when he would live with them. Zechariah 14:16 points to that time as it speaks of the Feast of Booths. Of course, Jesus came to live among mankind for a time, as John 1:14 teaches, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory. Glory is of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. Revelation 21:3 points to the day when God will live with men. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God." So I think it's a biblical concept to want to have this dwelling, this living together. And it seemed to be a Jewish expectation that this would happen. Maybe Peter is thinking of that. But by his words, as we mentioned, he does not see Jesus as superior to Moses and Elijah. And if we can put ourselves in his shoes, to his credit too, wouldn't it be amazing to see Moses and Elijah? That'd be an exciting thing. So he's living with Jesus, and now these 2 other men appear. 2 other significant men from the past. But still, he needs to grow in understanding. Admittedly, he didn't know what to say. He, James, and John are terrified by what they're witnessing, and hopefully we can understand that this is a human response to a very unique situation, but they should see Jesus for who he really is. But even knowing that, witnessing something like this would shock us as well. Then, before the extraordinary event suddenly ends, God the Father speaks from a cloud that's overshadowing them. Of the 3 men standing before Peter, James, and John in glorious form, God identifies one who is superior, Jesus. "This is my beloved Son." I'm going to interact more with his statement in just a bit. But first, see that by this statement, God clearly shows that Jesus is greater even than Moses and Elijah. These are not 3 equal men. God used Moses to communicate his message to the Israelites, and he used Elijah to do the same, but Jesus is greater than both. Isn't it amazing how strong the pull can be for us to see Jesus as less than he really is, and to see others as more than they really are? Peter doesn't grasp the superiority of Jesus yet, and as a result, he thought too highly of Moses and Elijah, and not highly enough of Jesus. Many, it seems, are comfortable with including Jesus among others that they occasionally pay homage to, giving a little worship here and a little worship there. What happens as a result of this wrong worship, though? Well, seeing Jesus as less than he really is goes along with disagreeing with his message. So I want you to see the combination of seeing Christ rightly and hearing his message rightly that's in this passage. He clearly taught at the end of chapter 8 that those who would follow him must deny themselves and follow him while being prepared to die. He taught this after teaching that he would face suffering and death. That's not a message that gathers many to Jesus, but it will drive many away from him. People fail to see Jesus rightly. They fail to receive his message rightly. These two responses are tied together. But by God's intervening grace, the disciples also would have ultimately failed. Only by God's intervening grace did they not fail to receive his message eventually and see Jesus rightly eventually. Are you having trouble accepting the message of Jesus? Are you pushing back against some elements of what he has said in the Word? I would also question that if you're pushing back against parts of his message, do you have an accurate view of the Son of God who came in the flesh? Are you having trouble seeing Jesus as superior, as the only Savior who's to be worshipped? If so, I would also question whether you're accepting the message that he taught. These are tied together. Well, the point on this passage is not simply that Jesus is greater than Moses and Elijah. It also shows that people should listen to him because God the Father identifies him as his Son, verse 7. I know my outline is a bit wacky here. I cover 2 through 8 and then go back to cover verse 7 again, but I think there's multiple points to bring out here. And that second point is that God identifies Jesus as his Son. If you remember, God already made a statement like this in the book of Mark. It was at the baptism of Jesus. God said in Mark 1:11, "You are my beloved Son, with you I am well pleased." In both passages, God the Father calls Jesus his beloved Son, but the statements are different from each other. Mark 1 shows the Father talking to him. It's to Jesus. Mark 9, who is God the Father talking to now? It's to his disciples. So that's one difference. He's talking to Peter, James, and John. See how else the statements are different. In Mark 1, God says to Jesus, "With you I am well pleased." In Mark 9, he says to the disciples, "Listen to him." So once again, let's track down the context and flow of events. Peter professes Jesus is the Christ in Mark 8:29. Jesus starts teaching plainly about his coming suffering, death, and resurrection. Peter rebukes him. "Don't talk like that, Jesus." But in response, Jesus rebukes Peter and teaches that he expects those who follow him to deny themselves and follow ready to die. Not a popular message. Now, just 6 days later, God the Father speaks to tell 3 of those disciples, seemingly the leaders among the 12, maybe the more influential among the 12, to listen to Jesus, his beloved Son. Hopefully this strikes a chord in the minds of the disciples where Jesus had said a fair amount about listening. We've tried to bring that out as we've gone through the gospel. But the question to ask is why? Why did God the Father see fit to say this message to the disciples? And ultimately, why did Jesus transfigure before them? By identifying Jesus as his Son, God the Father does what? What does he accomplish in this event? What he does is he stamps approved to the message of Jesus. That's what God accomplishes in this. Just when, in human terms, the disciples might be wrestling with whether they really want to follow Jesus on the path of suffering and death, just when they might be weak and doubting or unsure, God says, "This is my beloved Son. Listen to him." What's the implication? Well, it's not really implied. It's pretty direct. God supports the message Jesus is saying. Jesus has divine support. So Peter, James, and John, before you walk away from Jesus, realize this. the Son of God. You listen to him. These three men need God's help to know that Jesus is from God. This is the nature of revelation, in that without God revealing who he is and what he expects, we cannot know who he is and what he expects. We can only get there with God's help. Now we don't have God revealing his message to us today from a cloud with an audible voice, but we have God's complete word to us in the Bible. Without God coming to mankind with the truth, we would not know the truth. God speaks to Peter, James, and John so that they know the truth about Jesus, so that they would know that they must listen to what he is saying. They'll understand more over time, but see this act of God to reveal Jesus, his true identity. See this act as a gracious act to keep his disciples following Jesus and listening to him. That God would speak from the cloud, by the way, reminds us of how God spoke with Moses in a similar way in Exodus 24. One commentator put it, the cloud both conceals and reveals God's glory. According to the testimony of Scripture, such a manifestation of God's glory had not happened for a long time, nor had God revealed through his voice, from what we know in the Bible, for many years. There can be no doubt that God the Father supports what his Son is doing. This means that even the message of suffering and death is approved by God the Father. His disciples must listen and accept what Jesus has been teaching. Well, it's one thing for the disciples to experience a unique event. It's a whole other thing for them to understand what just happened. As Jesus and his disciples go down the mountain, it becomes clear that Jesus knows very well what God's servants are to do. They don't. Jesus knows what God's servants are to do, verses 9 to 13. That's the third reason for why the disciples should listen. He knows what the Father expects. He understands the place of John the Baptist or Elijah, and he knows where the disciples are at in their growth as his followers. And so he's the best one to direct them going forward. They should listen to him. When I spent about 2 years in the Twin Cities driving all around that area for a handicap service, I came to appreciate the Garmin GPS that we had bought. And I came to learn how to use that tool well to find out how to get where I needed to go. This was before phones replaced such devices, of course. We can hardly imagine a world where we don't use our phones to get from point A to point B. But it wasn't so long ago that Garmin's really filled a good, helpful niche as we drove around. Erica and I have learned, however, and I talked to her before sharing this, but we've learned that in the days since then, while I was very compatible with my Garmin to get from point A to B, when it comes to family trips, her and I are only barely compatible as pilot and co-pilot. And I say barely because surely there's some way that we're compatible in finding a way to get there. Whether it's my failure to communicate the timing and type of directions I need, and I know that's a part of it, or whether it's her approach to seeing and communicating the directions from the phone, we've learned that it's quite best for me to have the phone where I can see it, and for her to enjoy the ride. We're happier that way. It's better for our marriage. It's better for life to do that. In that kind of situation, we both readily admit that we each contribute to the possible tension that could develop if we tried to follow directions together. Both of us have responsibility in things not going well. When it comes to Jesus and his giving directions to his people through his teaching and the teachings of his disciples, he knows where his people need to go. He is equipping his disciples, and through that training, he gives what we need as well. Any failure to walk in faithfulness and obedience is solely and completely at the feet of his followers. His instruction is right on. He knows what's coming. He tries to prepare them. It is they who wrestle with receiving and following his instructions. It's so easy for us to point the finger back at God, or just to do that unintentionally kind of back of our minds, to wonder, what is God doing? He's given us the directions in His Word for going forward. Any failure to follow is at our feet. Although Jesus knows what's coming here, and although He brought these 3 disciples with Him up the mountain, we see in verse 9 that He does not want them telling anyone about this event until the resurrection. It's interesting that even that command was something the 3 of them did not fully understand, because they questioned to themselves what rising from the dead might mean. They're not getting everything. Maybe that's why Jesus doesn't want them passing on what happened, because there's much they don't understand. How do they explain something they don't understand? After the resurrection, they begin to understand more and are better prepared to help others see the significance of the transfiguration, like what Peter does in one of his epistles. To say this differently, the disciples must witness and experience more of Jesus and His mission before they're ready to speak of this event. As we come to verse 11, it seems to make sense that the disciples asked about Elijah. Why? They just saw him. Now their minds might be going back to the prophecy in Malachi that I read earlier, Malachi 4-6. They know that Elijah has a part in prophecy. And then they saw Elijah, so they wonder where he fits in. Where Elijah turns the hearts of fathers to their children, and the hearts of children to their fathers before the great and awesome day of the Lord. I think the disciples might be seeing Elijah's coming as the next prophesied event that will happen according to the Old Testament. And in verse 12, Jesus affirms that Elijah comes to restore. Speaking of John the Baptist, Luke 1:16 and 17 says, "And he will turn many of the children of Israel to the Lord their God. And he will go before him in the spirit and power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the disobedient to the wisdom of the just, to make ready for the Lord a people prepared." John the Baptist came in the spirit and power of Elijah, as Malachi 4:4-6 promised, turning many people to God and turning the hearts of fathers to the children. But at this point, we must be carefully noticing what connects the teaching from Jesus in verse 12. It's kind of it's an argument you can get lost in. You can read the end of this passage and say, how does this all relate to each other? How does Elijah's or John the Baptist's ministry relate to the ministry of the Son of Man, to Jesus Himself? Why does Jesus ask about the suffering that the Son of Man will face? Well, verse 13 helps us. John the Baptist, the prophesied Elijah, came and brought people to repentance, but he paid a dear cost in doing so. What was the cost? He was executed. He was killed. The cost was his life. As Jesus says in verse 13, they did to him whatever they pleased. What's the point? He is teaching that even John the Baptist, who had a prophesied place in God's plan, suffered dearly. If he, the promised Elijah, suffered such an end as death, as execution, then who are they to fight against the teaching that the Son of Man will suffer and die? Suffering and death are not always outside of God's plan. And in fact, God's plan for Jesus includes suffering and death. I think that's the point. As Mark sent his gospel to believers living in uncertain times in the Roman Empire, many Christians would be encouraged by this comment about people doing whatever they pleased against John the Baptist, not because they rejoiced in his death, but because the suffering showed that John the Baptist, or how he talked about John the Baptist, showed that his life was not a failure. He was faithful and suffered. They might also suffer, but they can do so while being faithful to the name of Jesus. Sometimes things go really bad and we think, what did I do wrong? Suffering and death is ahead, and I must have done something wrong. And what Jesus is showing is that no, for some of God's servants, this is the path that God has. There's nothing wrong with those people. And it's giving back that message. Don't fight against what Jesus is saying. He says suffering and death is coming. Don't fight against that. Why listen to Jesus, the glorious Son of God? He's greater than Moses and Elijah. God the Father identifies him as his Son, and he knows what God's servants are to do. Let's consider two truths here. Truths related to God, His creation, and His work within creation that this passage points us towards. First, for Jesus, the difficulty was not being glorious. The hardship came in being like us. It was not difficult for Jesus to be glorious. He is glorious, the Son of God. The hardship came in being like us. The glory that the disciples witnessed, this transfiguration that showed the splendor of the Son of God, was revealing His divine nature. This transfiguration is showing who Jesus really is. The hardship for Jesus is not in looking glorious, it's in what God chose for Him to experience as a man on earth with a mission to seek and save the lost, on His way to dying to redeem His people. His hardship comes in being like us to die in our place. That, believers, is where Jesus experienced hardship. What's my point? We need often the reminder that Jesus is far more than simply a man. He's the God-man. As such, He's preeminently worthy of worship. He is the glorious Son of God, and as such, He's preeminently worthy of our trust. What He says, we must believe and obey. The temptations can be to think that what Jesus taught was old-fashioned or simplistic, like the parables. Which, if you study the parables, some of them there's nothing simplistic about it. Or we can be tempted to think that His teaching was just for the leaders of the early church or simply for a day gone by. In other words, the temptations seem to be endless for why we should dismiss the teaching of Jesus. The disciples had reasons to do that as well. In part, at least, they just did not like His message of coming suffering and death. Do you have reasons that you can identify for why Jesus' words aren't for you? Always be seeking to grow in seeing Him rightly and seeing Him as this glorious Son of God. As you grow in your view of God, that will help you grow in receiving the words of God. These are tied together. Your view of God and your reception of the words of God. Even John, who saw the transfiguration of Jesus, needed to grow in seeing Him rightly. When he saw the risen Lord later in life, Revelation 1:17 and 18 shows his response. This is John, who saw the transfiguration. As he's an old man, he says, when I saw Him, this is another viewing of Christ that he had. When I saw Him, I fell at His feet as though dead, but He laid His right hand on me, saying, fear not, I am the first and the last, and the living one. I died, and behold, I am alive forevermore, and I have the keys of death and Hades. If John, who walked with Jesus for years on earth, and saw the glory of his Lord on the mountain, still responded like this, how much more might we need to grow in our fear and our awe of Jesus, the Son of God? Secondly, God knows what His people need in order to continue listening to Jesus. This is an encouraging truth that we can glean from the flow of the book. As Mark 8 ends, it seems that the disciples are balking at the message from Jesus. They did not decide to follow Him so that they could die and so that they could face early deaths. Yet His call to His followers made it clear that death could be around the corner. So Jesus takes the leaders of the group, Peter, James, and John. He shows them His glory as God the Father speaks to these men and tells them to listen to Jesus. This clearly confirms that heaven approves of what Jesus is doing. The disciples don't understand what all happened, but they continue to follow Jesus. Now, don't go looking for a vision of Jesus and words from heaven when your faith is weak. There's a different period of God's working on earth, but look to verses like Philippians 1:6, which says, and I'm sure of this, that He who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. I do think that our passage today serves as an example of the truth that God cares for His people in various ways in order to keep them following in the path of Jesus. I also believe that God has given us great and precious promises in His Word to keep us following after Jesus. Do not lose hope. The Christian life is not all up to you. Your great God and Father has begun the work of salvation in you, believer. He is working to complete what he started, and he will not leave you alone. Let's pray. God, how great the challenge is for us, your people, to listen to your words. How great the challenge is for us, your people, to see Christ, our Savior, as he is. To keep in mind that he is the glorious Son of God. God, fully God. So we ask, Father, grow us to be more in awe of our Savior. Grow us to treasure his words, his teachings more. That we would be those who listen to what he has said.